We've all seen it before and I've read the book before, right?
No, I haven't.
So, Wolves of Willoughby Chase, Joan Aitken, last two chapters. Oh no, we've got 3 chapters, 9, 10, 11. So we'll have to read it. I'll have to get you up early before you go to school.
Ooh.
Right, 9. Sylvia's ill, Bonnie muttered to Simon as soon as they were outside the gate. She can hardly walk. I think we shall have to carry her. No, she can get in the cart, Simon whispered back, and then Bonnie saw that he had with him a beautiful little cart drawn by a donkey. Her eyes lit up with delight. Why, it's the very thing. Isn't it the one from Willoughby that we used for picnics? Whoosh, yes, whispered Simon. Let's get away quick, and then I'll explain. Between them, they lifted the trembling, shivering Sylvia into the cart. She gave a little protesting moan as she came into contact with something soft that seemed alive. What is it? Breathed Bonnie. The geese. They won't hurt her. There are quilts and mattresses underneath. Well, there are quilts and mattresses underneath. Swiftly and skillfully, Simon disposed Sylvia into the cart, or in the cart, on a warm mattress covered with several quilts. 30 sleepy, grumbling geese were pushed unceremoniously to one side, and then, when Sylvia was settled, allowed to perch all over and round her until only her face was showing. There, they'll keep her famously warm. And in fact, the warmth of the mattress and quilts and the soft, feathery bodies on top was such that in 2 minutes Sylvia was in a deep sleep and never even felt the cart begin to move. Will you ride too, Miss Bonnie? No, I'll walk at the head with you, Simon. Let's be off then. They hastened away. Simon had tied rags round the wheels, and they went silently over the cobbled road. The only sound was the tippity-tap of the donkey's feet. When they had turned several corners and put several streets between them and Mrs. Brisket's school, both Simon and Bonnie breathed more freely. No one will remark us now, said Bonnie. Or point out, say, look at them over there. As they passed into a wide naphtha street lit. Naphtha, look at that word. Naphtha lighted street in the middle of the town. I wonder if they have that word in the back. Naphtha. Oh, we've got a test in the back here. I'll have to read it. Get you to do the test. Where, although it was nearly midnight, trams still clanged up and down, and pit and factory workers trudged to and fro in their clogs. Certainly no one would take you for Miss Bonnie Green, said Simon, chuckling. You'll make a proper boy in those things, haircut and all. Here, I brought these for you. He turned, sank an arm into the cart and rummaged among the geese, and brought out 2 sheep's wool-lined caps, one of which he carefully placed over Sylvia's sleeping head. The other he gave to Bonnie, who gratefully pulled it on, for the snow was now falling thick and fast. Miss Patton made them for you. They weren't finished in time to leave with the other things. Patton? Oh, did she make the clothes? Yes, she did. When she heard I was going to help you, and James found the donkey and cart. Miss Slycart was going to have sold them, but James told her they belonged to the parson and hid them away. I reckon.
Who's the parson?
The parson, I think that's somebody involved with the church, isn't it? A parson, let's have a look. A parson. Beneficed member of the Anglican clergy, a rector or vicar. So, informally, any clergyman, especially a Protestant one. I reckon it would be just the thing for our journey. And Miss Patton gave me a saucepan and a fry pan and some cups and plates and a great pie. They're all in the back under the seat. We'll have a bite to eat presently. I dare say you're clemmed, Miss Bonny. Well, I don't know. Let's have a look. It must be hungry. Oops. Clem. Well, it must be a colloquial expression, local to an area, because it's not in the dictionary. Clemmed, starved, faint with cold and hunger. There we go. So it was in the back of the book. And where did I just read that?
I dare say you're clemmed, Miss Bonny.
Thank you, Luke. But not till we're out of the town. Where is Pattern? Asked Bonny. She's gone back to live with her mother at the lodge. She sent her dear love, but didn't dare ask you to call in, for Miss Leichhardt pauses there every day and there's only the one room, as you know. If there's a search for you, they'd be bound to go there. It's best Pattern should not have seen you. And is James still at the house? Yes. He gave me the guineas to put in your pockets out of his wages, and gracious knows they're little enough now. I've spent mine already, Simon, confessed Bonny, and told what she had done. Simon shook his head at her, but all he said was, "'Twas like you, Miss Bonny." Simon, it's ridiculous to go on calling me Miss. Just call me plain Bonny. Simon grinned, but answered indirectly. Have you got that coal cellar key with you? Here's a good place to get rid of it. They were crossing the bridge over the wide river, with its busy traffic of coal barges and wool wherries. When Bonny produced the key and the two overalls, he made them into a bundle with a bit of string, weighted it with a cobble, and threw the whole thing into the river. They went on with light hearts. Then they went on with light hearts.
What's light?
Well, feeling better that they've got rid of the old clothes and the key. The town presently gave way to country. Not much could be seen in the dark, but Bonny caught dim glimpses of snow-covered slag heaps, where here and there a great pit wheel or chimney. Then they passed fields, enclosed in dry stone walls. After a while they were climbing up a long, slow ascent, the beginning of the wolds. You'd best have a bit of a sleep now, Simon suggested to Bonny after a couple of hours had passed. We're safe away, and 'twill be morning by and by. What about the wolves, though? Bonny said. Shan't we be in danger from them? I'd better help you keep a lookout. Have you brought a gun? Aye, I've my bow, and James gave me your fowling piece. It's in the cart. But I doubt we'll be troubled by wolves. It's turned March now, and with spring coming they'll be moving farther north. We're not likely to see any of them once we're over Great Wineside. What shall we do about Sylvia, Simon? She ought to stop somewhere till she's well enough for the journey. I've been thinking about that, and I know the very place. We'll reach it about 6 a.m. You get in the cart and have a nap now. All right, I will, said Bonny, who was beginning to be very sleepy. If you're sure the donkey can stand the load. She patted the donkey's nose. Caroline's pulled heavier loads than that. So the cart was halted, and Bonny, carefully so as not to wake Sylvia, scrambled in and made a nest for herself among the feather quilts and the warm, drowsy geese. Soon she, too, was asleep. When Bonny woke, she lay wondering for a moment where she was. There was no clanging bell, no complaining voices, and instead of shivering under her one thin blanket, she was deliciously comfortable and warm. A cool breeze blew over her face. The cart jolted, and then she remembered that what had been happening and said softly, Simon? His voice came from somewhere in front. Yeah? Stop the cart a moment. I want to get out. Not worth it, he said. We're nearly there. Bonnie wriggled to a sitting position and looked about her. The sky was still mostly dark, but daylight was slowly growing in the east. Thin fronds of green and lemon yellow were beginning to uncurl among the masses of inky cloud. When Bonnie looked back, she could see that they had come over a great ridge of hills, whose tops were still lost in the blackness of the sky to the north. Ahead of them was a little dale, and loops of the white road were visible leading down a dale. A little dale. No, it's like a little glen in between.
What's a glen?
Well, let me give you the answer to a dale. It's a valley, especially in northern England. And a glen is a narrow valley, especially in Scotland or Ireland. When Bonnie looked back, she could see that they had come over a great ridge of hills, whose tops were still lost in the blackness of the sky to the north. Ahead of them was a little dale, and loops of white road were visible leading down to it over the rolling folds of moor. A tremendous hush lay over the whole countryside. Even the birds were not awake yet. That's where we'll have our breakfast. Simon pointed ahead. That's Herondale. We're way off the main road now. No one's likely to come looking for us here. He began to whistle a soft tune as he walked, and Bonnie, curling up even more snugly, watched in great contentment as the lemon-yellow sky changed to orange and then to red, and presently the sun burst up in a blaze of gold. Simon, what is it? There's no snow here. Often it's like that, he said, nodding. We've left snow t'other side of Winsdale. Down in Herondale it'll be warm. Presently they came to the last steep descent into the valley, and Simon then allowed Bonnie to get out of the cart while he adjusted the drag on the wheels to stop it running downhill too fast. All this time Sylvia slept. She stirred a little as they reached the foot of the hill and walked through a fringe of rowan trees into a tiny village consisting of 3 or 4 cottages round a green, with a couple of outlying farms. We'll go to the forge, said Simon, and he led the donkey across the green to a low building under a great walnut tree. Bonnie fell back and walked beside the cart, smiling at Sylvia's puzzled, sleepy face. The geese were beginning to stir and stretch their long necks, and at first sight of them Sylvia looked slightly alarmed. But when she saw Bonnie, she smiled too, and shut her eyes again. Smith's up, said Simon. A thread of smoke dribbled from the forge chimney, and they could see a red glow over the stable door in front, while the noise of the bellows came in regular wheezing roar. Simon called over the forge door, "Mr. Wilderness!" The roaring stopped and there was a clink. Then a face appeared over the half door and the smith came out. He was an immensely tall man, wearing a blackened leather apron. Bonnie couldn't help smiling. He looked so like a large, gentle, white-haired lion, with a pair of dark eyes like those of a collie dog, half hidden by the locks of white hair that fell over his forehead. "Hey, it's you, Simon, me boy. What road can I help you?" "Caroline's loosed a shoe," said Simon, patting the donkey. "And as well as that, we'd like your advice about a little lass here. She's not well." "Childer come afford donkeys," Mr. Wilderness said. He moved over beside the cart and looked down at Sylvia's face among the geese. Yeah, pretty little fair lass she be. What's amiss with her? She's got a cough and a sore throat and a fever, explained Bonnie. The smith gazed at Bonnie wide-eyed. And that, another of them, bless me, who'd have thought it? I took thee for a boy in that rig. Well, she's sleeping fair in a goose feather bed. I can't better that. And they goose feathers, he said to Simon. Stuff the quilts and mattresses myself. Simon nodded. My own geese, champion. Goose grease for chilblains, goose feathers for a chill. We'll leave her in the cart. Shouldn't she be put to bed? Bonnie said doubtfully. Nay, where, lass? I've only the forge and the kitchen where I sleep myself. Nay, we'll put her, cart and all, in the shippen. She'll be gradely there. That's something they say in Yorkshire. It's reet gradely.
What's that?
Well, it's grand, I think. It's definitely a Yorkshire, an expression from Yorkshire. He led them round the corner of the forge and showed them how to back the cart into a big barn with double doors on each side. When he opened these, sunlight poured into the place and revealed that it was half full of hay and lined along the walls with lambing pens made from hurdles. A tremendous...
What are lambing pens made from hurdles?
Yeah,
What are they?
I don't know, maybe it's just like fences. A tremendous baaing and bleating came from these, and, walking along, Bonnie saw with delight that each pen contained a sheep and 1, 2 or 3 lambs. There's not like lying with sheep 2-3 days for a chesty cough. You think you should recommend that, eh? Go and lie with lambs for 2 or 3 days if you've got a bad cough. Pronounced Mr. Wilderness. The breath of sheep has a powerful virtue in it. That and a brew of my cherry bark syrup with maybe a spoonful of honey in it and a plateful of 2 of good porridge will set her to rights better than the grandest doctor in the kingdom. Put her in the sun there, lad. When sun gets round we can open t'other doors and let him in that side. Now for a bite of breakfast. I'm fair clemmed, and happen you'll be the same if you've walked all the way from Blackburn. We've a pipe and some victuals, said Simon. Notice how I pronounce that word. It looks like victuals, but it's victuals. Ah, I thought you'd ask that, Rachel. If you work in a pub, you'd know what victuals are, or a restaurant. Food or provisions.
What's provisions? Just food.
Yeah, stuff you can eat. It actually comes from Latin, victus, which means food. But it is pronounced victual, not vic. You do not pronounce the C.
Yuck.
Nay, lad, save thy pie for later. Porridge is on the forge fire this minute. And what's better than that? The geese had climbed and fluttered out of the cart and were busy foraging in the hay. Bonnie, after making sure that Sylvia was covered and had gone back to sleep, was glad to come into the smith's clean little kitchen, which opened off the smithy and was as warm as...
The smithy, the place with the sled.
The smithy is the where the smith works. His forge. He'll have all his tools and his anvil and his fire in there for mending horses' feet and stuff. They sat down at a table covered with a checked red and white cloth. Oh, by the way, Smith is the most popular surname in the UK, by the way, because it would have had lots of Smiths back in the day. Mr. Wilderness's porridge was very different from that served in Mrs. Brisket's school. It was eaten with brown sugar from a big blue bag, and with dollops of thick yellow cream provided by Mr. Wilderness's 2 red cows, who stood sociably outside the kitchen door while breakfast was going on, and licked the nose of Caroline the donkey. After the porridge they had great slices of sizzling bacon and cups of scalding brown tea. Then the smith prepared a draught of his cherry bark medicine, syrupy golden stuff with a wonderful aromatic scent, and took it out to Sylvia, who was stirring drowsily. She swallowed it down, smiled a sleepy "no thank you" to an offer of the porridge and cream, and closed her eyes again. "Aye, sleep's the best cure of all," said Mr. Wilderness. "You look as if you could do with a bit too, my lass." Bonny did begin to feel that she could do nothing but yawn, and so Simon made her a nest in the hay and covered her with one of his goose feather quilts. Here in the sun, amid the comfortable creaking of the geese and the baying chorus of the sheep, she too fell into a long and dreamless sleep. They stayed with Mr. Wilderness for 3 days until he pronounced Sylvia better and fit to travel. In the meantime, Simon helped the smith by blowing the fire and carving wooden handles for the farm implements he made. Bonny washed all his curtains, tablecloths and sheets, and aided by Simon did a grand spring clean of the cottage. 2 months ago I shouldn't have known how to do this, she said cheerfully, beating mats on the village green. Going to Mrs. Brisket's at least taught me housework and how to look after hens. Mr. Wilderness was sorry to lose them when they went. If they'd stayed another 2 weeks, the birds would have been nesting and the primroses all showing their little pink faces. Herondale's a gradely place in springtime. "Pink faces?" said Bonny disbelievingly. "Don't you mean yellow?" "Nay, they're pink round here, lass."
What's pink?
Primroses.
What's pink?
It's a type of flower. "And the geraniums is blue." But even with this inducement, they wanted to press on to London. They left with many farewells, promising that they would call in on the return journey or come over as soon as they were safely back at Willoughby Chase. The journey to London took them nearly 2 months. They had to go at goose pace, for in the daytime the geese flew out of the cart and wandered along as they chose, pecking any edible thing by the roadside, and, as Simon explained, there's no sense in hurrying the geese, or by the time we reach Smithsfield, they'll be thin and scrawny and nobody'll buy 'em. "Anyway," said Bonny, "supposing Mrs. Brisket and Miss Slycarp had set people searching for us, the search will surely have died down by the end of 2 months." So they made their leisurely way, picking flowers, of which they found more and more as spring advanced, and they travelled farther south, watching the birds and stopping to bathe and splash in moorland brooks. At night they usually camped near a farm, sleeping in or under the cart in their warm goose-feather quilts. If it rained, farmers offered them shelter in barn or haymow. Often a kindly... I don't know, Rachel.
Mound of hay.
Must be, yeah. Let's have a look.
Sounds like it.
Don't think... It's not a word I've come across before. Haymow. Haymow. A stack of hay, or part of a barn in which hay is stored. Often a kindly farmer's wife invited them in for a plate of stew and sped them on their way with a baking of pasties and apple dumplings. In return, Sylvia did exquisite darning, Bonny helped with housework, sewing, and Simon, who could turn his hand to anything, ploughed or milked or sawed wood, or mended broken tools. Pattern had smuggled one or two books and Bonnie's paint box from the attic out to the cart with the food and clothes, and these were a great resource on rainy evenings in the hay. They read aloud to each other, and Simon, who had never bothered about reading before, learned how and even pronounced it quite a handy accomplishment. He also took a keen pleasure in making use of Bonnie's box of colours, and sometimes could hardly be torn away from some view of a crag or waterfall that he was busy sketching. The girls would wander slowly on with Caroline, the cart and the geese, until Simon, finished at last, caught them up at a run with the colour box under his arm and the painting held out at arm's length to dry. Sylvia and Bonnie thought his pictures very beautiful, but Simon was always dissatisfied with them and would give them away to any passer-by who admired them. Several people pressed money on him for them, and once, when they were stopping overnight in a little village named Beckside, the landlord of the inn, the Snake and Ladder, who had seen one of the sketches, asked if Simon would repaint his faded inn sign. So they spent a pleasant day at the village, feeding the gamecocks at the innkeeper's table on roast duck and apple cheesecake, while Simon painted a gorgeous green and gold serpent twined in the rungs of a pruning ladder. Should you like to be a painter, do you think, Simon? Sylvia asked. I might, he confessed. I never thought of such a trade before. But there's a lot to learn, and I doubt I'd ever have the money for a teacher. Bonnie opened her lips to speak, and then checked herself, sighing. Late in April, they came to the top of Hampstead Hill, among the great old houses and the young green trees. At the foot of the hill, they could see the village of Chalk Farm, and, far away, the great city of London spread out, with its blue veil of smoke and its myriads of spires and chimneys. Sylvia felt a quickening of her heart to think she was so close to her dear Aunt Jane again. How pleased the old lady would be to see her beloved little niece. They camped that night on Hampstead Heath, near a tribe of gypsies, and indeed they looked like gypsies themselves. Bonnie and Simon were as brown as berries, and their black locks were decidedly in want of cutting, while even Sylvia would hardly have been recognised for the thin, pale, fair child who had set out to Willoughby Chase so many months ago. Her cheeks were pink, and her hair, though not its original length yet, was thick and shining and reaching to her shoulders. They found an obliging dairyman in Hampstead village who was willing to keep Caroline and the cart for them in his stable, and the next day they drove the geese down into London. You girls had best not come to Smithfield Market, said Simon. It's a rough, wild place, not fit for little maids. I've been thinking, suggested Bonnie, how would it be if we tried to find Mr. Gripe's office while you're at the market? Sylvia, can you tell us where lawyers' offices in London are usually to be found? Sylvia said she thought they were in the region of Chancery Lane. Having inquired the way of a constable, therefore, the girls accompanied Simon as far as Lincoln's Inn Fields, and there he left them with Goosey and Gandy, the two parent geese. That's the name of the geese, Goosey and Gandy. The two parent geese who were never sold, while he went on to dispose of the rest of the flock. Bonnie and Sylvia wandered along outside the houses that surrounded the fields and saw on brass door plates the names of many attorneys, barristers and commissioners for oaths, but nowhere that of Mr. Gripe. At about midday when, tired, they were lying sunning themselves on the grass and eating sliced beef and lemon tarts procured at a nearby cook shop, Bonnie suddenly exclaimed, "Look, Sylvia! Look! Isn't that Mr. Grimshaw?" A portly, middle-aged man was walking across the grass towards a nearby archway. Sylvia scrutinised him closely and whispered, "Yes, I am almost sure it is he, if he would but turn his head this way." "We must follow him and find out," Bonnie said decisively. "If he, too, is in London, we shall have to be on our guard." The two children got up and, calling their geese, walked fast, but not so as to attract his attention, after the gentleman in question. He passed through the archway, descended some steps, and turned into a small street, where he stopped outside one of the houses. Perhaps it is his residence," whispered Sylvia. They approached slowly. Unfortunately, a large black cat was seated on the pavement, and if there was one animal that Goosey abominated, it was a cat. He set up a vociferous honking and cackling, and the gentleman, in the act of ringing the doorbell, turned his head and looked at the two girls. His eyes passed over Bonnie, but he stared very sharply at Sylvia for an instant. Then the door opened and he was admitted. "Oh, mercy!" exclaimed Sylvia. "Do you think he recognised me? For it was undoubtedly Mr. Grimshaw. I could not have sat so long opposite him in the train and been mistaken." "I am not certain if he knew you," said Bonnie uneasily. "It is possible. You are not so sunburned as Simon or I. We had better not remain in this vicinity." They were turning to go when Bonnie's quick eyes caught sight of the brass plate by the door that Mr. Grimshaw had entered. "Look, Sylvia." I don't even know how to pronounce that. How do you know? Abednego. Abednego Gripe, attorney, father's man of business. Is not that a lucky chance? "Is it so lucky?" said Sylvia doubtfully, as they retraced their steps along the street. "I do not like the fact that Mr. Grimshaw has gone to see him. Why can he have done so? Do you suppose?" "No, you are right," Bonnie answered thoughtfully. "It is very queer. At all events, we must not go to see Mr. Gripe while Mr. Grimshaw is there. We had better wait until we have seen Aunt Jane and asked her advice." They remounted the steps and saw Simon crossing Lincoln's Inn Fields. He waved to them triumphantly. £22, girls. They fetch 14 and 8 each," he called as soon as he came within earshot. "We are rich." "Heavens, what a lot of money," breathed Sylvia. "Let us be off to Aunt Jane at once," said Bonnie. "Shall you want me to come?" asked Simon diffidently. "Gracious, yes, wherever not." You'll just have a drink of your water, Rich. "I'm only poor and rough." "Oh, what nonsense," said Bonnie, seizing his hand. "You can't come all this way with us and then desert us now, just when things might turn out better. Sylvia, tell us how to get from here to Park Lane." They finished their 400-mile journey riding on the open upper deck of one of the new horse-drawn omnibuses. So that's what we call a bus. The real name for a bus is an omnibus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Geese and all. Though Sylvia did rather shudder to think what Aunt Jane would say to this, should he chance to be looking out of her window when they arrived. Aunt Jane had many times told Sylvia that no lady ever rode in an omnibus, and more particularly not on the upstairs deck. I feel half afraid, confessed Sylvia, laughing, looking up at the familiar tall house with its Grecian columns on either side of the door and white window boxes filled with lobelia. Look, I think it must be a type of plant, Rachel. Lobelia. How did I just wear that? It's a plant of the bellflower family, typically with blue or scarlet flowers. Look, Bonnie, that is our window, the attic one, right up in the roof. The window box flowers are withered, commented Simon. So they are. That is not like Aunt Jane, said Sylvia, puzzled. She usually waters them carefully. The main door to the house stood open, and they went in silence up the stairs, up again, and still up. As they passed the door on the 4th floor landing, it flew open, and a young man's head popped out, exclaiming, "Is that the grocer? Have you brought my pies and turpentine?" Oh, in disappointment, as he saw Simon and Bonnie and the geese. Sylvia had impatiently gone on ahead. The young man eyed them in surprise a moment, then shut his door again. They caught up with Sylvia on the top landing. She was already tapping on Aunt Jane's attic door. It is strange, she does not answer. Perhaps she's out shopping, suggested Simon. But she always takes tea at this time of day. It was 5 o'clock. She could not have moved away, Bonnie said with a sinking heart. No, exclaimed Sylvia in relief. Here is the square door key that she always keeps under the oilcloth in case by some mischance she could lose her other one. She must be out after all. We will go in and surprise her on her return. She opened the door with the key, and cautioning them by laying her finger on her lips, tiptoed in. Bonnie and Simon rather shyly followed and stood hesitating in the tiny hallway, while Sylvia went into the one room which served Aunt Jane for kitchen, parlour and bedroom. Suddenly they heard Sylvia give a faint cry, and she came back to them, white and frightened. "What is it, Sylvia?" said Bonnie anxiously. "It's Aunt Jane. Oh, I think she must be dreadfully ill, or in a faint. She's there, and so thin and pale and hardly breathing. Come quickly." They hastened after her, Simon pausing but a moment to shut the geese out on the landing. They saw the poor old lady stretched on a bed under the jet-trimmed mantle. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was rapid and shallow. "Aunt Jane," whispered Sylvia. "It is I, Sylvia." There was no reply.